You can't make industry without having raw material. Raw material means mining, and we can find mines everywhere throughout. You've got mineralogy and metallurgy seem to be hand in hand. I can't really speak because there's an enormous amount of mining going on from Egypt, Morocco, in Spain, in Malaga, Baja, and so on. So there's a whole area of interest in mining. But akin to mining is the oil industry. Oil industry is quite old actually, and to be able to get oil and using distillation and purify it and so on is quite old. And we have references to the Fatimites, the Caliph al-Mu'tamid, when he sort of gave revenue, he got revenues and granted grants for what we call naft springs, which are effectively oil wells, and to the inhabitants in Brabant. But we find them also in Mosul, Khuzestan, and the mass production of zift, which is it's pitch and asphalt, called bitumen, and was used not only for as a result of extracting oil out of the remaining, which is this zift is for building. You find a lot of the ship industry was thriving, and they needed to have what we call today like a resin, a material that sticks mortar between the bricks. You need it for wood, so that you seal the ships and so on, to also give it strength and flexibility, asphalt and pitch was used in these, and they were sort of, and of course also in using this for weaponry. I'm going to have to skip mining. Almost in every country across the Muslim world there was mining for all sorts of things, including glass making, goldsmiths and so on. So I'm going to skip that because it does have melting and refining, particularly of mercury, steel, swords, heating of steel, producing what we call Damascus sword and so on. These are composites, because you beat some materials into each other while the iron is hot. You produce a special alloy that has got various special characteristics to distinguish it from other forms. And then the pearl industry, of course, again you have to dive and get pearls. We find evidence that there were also occasions when they used some mechanical grabbers, where you lower from the ship, you lower these grabbers onto the seabed, and then by manipulating the chains and so on, it grabs what is on the seabed. You bring it up and then find if there are any muscles and so on, so you can get the pearl up. There was reference earlier this afternoon to pharmacology, and there was the name alchemy as mentioned also this morning. But in my humble opinion, although I'm not a chemist, but it's quite clear that there was a transfer from the then known, what we now understand as alchemy, which is confusing chemistry as a science and witchcraft and so on, into chemistry as a science that we know today. And there are a number of Muslim chemists who have contributed to that. Many processes like distillation, sublimation, evaporation, filtration, and all sort of these are processes. They were laboratory based, but they find their way into mass industry, into perfumes and producing soap products. Yes, of course. Right, how many minutes have I got? Paper industry requires a whole paper for itself. I would like to refer that even the water mills actually also served as paper mills later. As you know, paper had originally been as a chemical process, from China, but to convert it into a mass production process required machine. You can't just keep beating and the pulp and then spread it on frames, or You need to also sometimes use rollers, and the beating to produce some of these water raising machines, which became automatic, like you have used 6 cylinders in here, like we have in our cars today, but these became beaters of the pulp in Spain and so on. So there was the pottery industry, which sprang in quite many places where you have the luster and hence production of beautiful pottery that has a golden sort of shining look, and which we still enjoy and have. That was very much enhanced during the Muslim period. The glass industry went all over the world, from Spain to now. I think that there is also an enormous amount of work to be said about textile industry, which I shall skip. But there is an interest, however, in some of these automations where water is used to interfere, or basically as fountains, and to make it pleasant. I thought I end my talk to show you that although fountains are familiar, but I'd like to know the history of fountains, and I found that these fountains seem to emerge with the Muslim period, where it sort of, with the sound of the water and the presence of the water in the garden, adds to the pleasure and to the comfort of people. However, some of these fountains, even from the year 870, like the works of Ibn Musa, they seem to be automatically changing shape and so on. I wanted to know and find out what was behind it. How do they change shape automatically? Because you can do that nowadays with computers and convert the water. But when we dig a bit deep, we find that there were some very ingenious devices actually developed, imagined even at that time. And in it, there is this fantastic tool, this worm wheel that converts motion from a small shaft to a larger shaft. Is there? And no, I don't have time to explain to you how this works, but imagine year 870 in Baghdad. Right, well, I hope that in terms of industry, that with your help and others, that we will be able to fill this gap. I think that the Muslims have done a great deal in industry, and we need to sort of show the connection between the Industrial Revolution and this gap which is missing. And thank you very much for listening.